Good morning, everyone. I'm Alyson Shelton, and Ronit Plank will be joining me shortly for our Memoir Chat number six. Six, which is kind of amazing. Um, Happy Monday, if you celebrate that. Today, we're going to be talking about these things. Ronit so nicely and put them on the entry announcing this conversation. We're going to be talking about
Oh,
I was
hey.
I was just summarizing what we were going to talk about. Are you in a
Yep,
car?
I am because there's a power outage. There's a power outage in my neighborhood. And so I went exercising and then my husband, I saw that it was still out. So I'm just in my car, but I think we're going to have some really good resonance.
Yeah,
Do you
you
hear it?
sound
Is it
good.
like
Yeah.
nice and contained in this
Yes.
chamber? Um,
I was just going over what we were going to talk about today because you did such a good job of summarizing it in your announcement, entry, caption. How do we know when something is ready?
yeah, oh my gosh. And I was talking about how much that really just I chased that down for so long when I first began writing.
Hmm.
And I think that I think I wanted the independence. I remember when I first started taking fiction classes. I guess we're jumping in. So let's jump in. Why not? We got some people here. Hi, people.
Yeah. Hi,
Um,
people.
yeah. So I'm Ronit, and that's
I'm
Allison.
Allison. I did say my name and say that you would be joining me.
Yes, yes.
So
I
I
told
did
you
I
all.
did that little bit of
Yeah, the
housekeeping.
business. Yeah.
That was really it.
Yeah, so basically when I first started taking writing class, I remember asking because we were in workshop groups and I really relied on my workshop groups so much. And but then I thought, well, when will I know this myself when it's ready? I'm so dependent on these people, and I also understood that their opinion was their opinion. And so, there's that sort of like that bridge between your instincts and what you want to create and how people are receiving it and
Yep.
holding on to what you know is right, but also being open. And so that it kind of, really nagged at me for a long time. And I remember my teacher, Scott Driscoll, at the time saying that you eventually get to a point, not that you should never share your writing later, but
Mm-hmm.
that you do get to a point where you've done it long enough. And I think that has happened for me with nonfiction. And, I would say the last bunch of stuff I've had published, nobody saw it before not that, again, but this is another part of the conversation, not that because you get published, you're necessarily, it's perfect or ready. And
Mm-hmm.
and if it doesn't get published, doesn't mean it's not perfect or ready. I was
Mm-hmm.
just visiting a class on Saturday that I'm teaching this Saturday coming up, and someone asked me, how what is it like? How do you send your stuff out? Why?
Yeah.
How is that something you can do without losing your confidence? And I said, well, I think because the more you read and the more you send out, and even as an editor like I do now
Yeah.
for the Citron Review,
Yeah.
you see sometimes things just don't fit. It's not about
Mm-hmm.
the person at all. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even often about the work. It's just, how it hits you, what you have, and just because someone says something isn't ready doesn't mean it isn't ready.
Well, also, I think that's why always in submission guidelines, they say, please read our
Yes.
journal. Please see if it's a good fit because that actually
Yeah.
matters.
And I think, but it's funny because I would say that I would say that of all the places I've submitted over the years, whether it was fiction or nonfiction or memoir, I mean, I haven't read those journals cover to cover.
No, no,
I
but
mean, I don't know if anyone has time for that. I mean, I think
no.
about that sometimes, but I'll check and I'll say like, okay, well, does this place seems like they really want
Hmm.
academic essays.
Right.
This is definitely not the piece for them.
Right. And I think also, I told you this in our last chat. I read a piece of yours that was in Pithead Chapel, and I had a piece I was thinking of submitting. And I was like, oh, I think this might be because it was similar and not, they're not the same at all, but it
Yeah.
just had a similar kind of approach and it got accepted. I think
Yeah.
partially because I just kind of felt inspired by your piece. And I felt like, oh, well, yeah, I could see something I write having a home in the same sort of place. I don't think you need to read it cover to cover, like you say, but
Yeah.
even if you just click on the website and kind of look around,
Yeah,
you
because
can get a
honestly,
sense.
sometimes at the Citron Review, we'll get stuff that is completely not, what we
Hmm.
publish. It might be like kind of like a book review,
Hmm.
kind of like a review, for our
Hmm.
department. And we don't do that. I mean, it's not that we don't host those reviews sometimes, but it was not something that we do at all. And, I just, so there's a misunderstanding, but the good news is there are plenty of places that
Yes.
do host that stuff,
Yes.
which is great. Like the diversity of work is amazing, and the diversity of
Yes.
journals. I mean, how many journals even are there? If you look at one of those databases, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's out there, and I think I may have said this in the last conversation or some conversation, but at one point I was in a group, like a Facebook group, that was about rejections and trying to get 100 rejections in a year, and that really changed my relationship to rejection. It's like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
this is just something. It's just part of it, and the
Yes, it's
more
just part of it.
rejections you get, the more acceptances you get. That's just
Totally.
the
Yeah, so then
truth.
how do you feel about how are you no, I know. And actually, I would say I definitely send, if I get a rejection, I send out to like two more places right away.
Hmm.
But then
Hmm.
sometimes, and this kind of feeds back into what we wanted to maybe focus on a little bit, sometimes I do have to go back and look and say,
Hmm.
is there something wrong with this? Maybe this isn't ready. And there
Hmm.
are times when I've looked back and almost gasped if there's something that I feel like sticks out, or this is not doing what I thought. I was
Hmm.
working on a
Hmm.
new piece a couple weeks ago. I've been working on it. I was so revved up about it. I was so excited about it. It was a new structure, like a new form for me. And I was like, wow, this is real. I'm really excited. And then I gave it a break and did some other stuff. And I went back and I thought, this is not ready at all. I thought, because my feeling writing it and the passion I had for what I was writing
Hmm.
made me feel so strongly that someone had to read it. But that was different from receiving it later as just a reader and not someone who'd freshly written it.
Hmm. I loved that quote about time is the best editor. I don't know if I'm,
Yeah,
yeah,
Jen
time is the
Smith.
best editor. Yeah, I love that because I agree with what you're saying. There are certain pieces that I write and I am super fired up when I'm writing them. And sometimes those get rejected. And if they have feedback, that's always nice. If you know why it's getting rejected. But
Yeah.
sometimes I just had to write the thing and then I'm grateful it got rejected. And then this piece that's going to be in
Yeah.
Pitt Chapel, I sat on it for a while because it's about my husband and I
Mm.
don't generally write about him. And, but then I thought, oh, I really love this and I'm proud of this and I'm going to submit it. And I'm glad it's going to be out in the world. But I think feeling too much time pressure is probably never that great. Like that there's some kind
Mm-hmm.
of deadline, especially when
Mm-hmm.
most of us are doing this in
It
our
can be
free
hard to
time.
wait. I mean, it can be
It
hard to
can be.
wait. Like, yes, we're not doing it because someone's paying us to create. Like, can you imagine if someone was like, here's your stipend? Well, I mean, I guess there are those, right?
There are.
Those are grants
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
residencies and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, which seem really nice. I'm really looking forward to that because I've been working steadily on producing season 2 of Let's Talk Memoir. And
Yes.
so I've like, my husband asked me last night, we had dinner, the kids were each spoken for, they each went out and did something. And so we had dinner, just the two of us, which is really nice. And he's like, what are you writing? What are you working on? I was like, nothing right now. I mean, I'm doing something else, but I am feeling a little like, oh, like I'm feeling a little like champing at the bit a little bit about wanting to go and sit and write, because right now all I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing is reading and interviewing and getting questions together for my guests,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. But I feel like, come mid-November, I'm hoping when those interviews are all stacked up and I've got them,
Yeah.
I can go back into my little cave of writing for the winter. I'm hoping. I'm hoping.
Your writing cave.
Yeah. So let's
Yeah.
talk about your article that you published in
Oh
Brevity.
yeah. Yeah. So it's called The Sanctity of the First Read, and it's about caring for our first read and really thinking about it because I'm sure as you have over the years had people ask me to read very early things, and I don't like to read very early things because I am a thoughtful reader and a thoughtful person, and I know that if I say it's not working, that could really hurt them, because when something is too soon,
Mm.
it's you're vulnerable as a writer. And but then so what's the point? Because I'm not going to be critical, so I'm not going to be anything. I'm just going to say, "Oh, I love what you're doing." So,
So when you wrote the piece, when you conceptualized the piece, I want to ask you, because I love like the origin stories of things too,
mm-hmm.
if you're comfortable sharing,
Yeah.
was it a response to how much of it was a response to you being asked to read and feeling like a little bristly about it, and how
Hmm.
much of it was you having asked someone to read your piece and being kind of upset about the response?
I think the reason now was the bristliness. And then as I was reflecting on it, I remember because I haven't, I am extremely guarded about what I'm writing in general. Like, really, if people ask me what I'm writing, I say something. I don't, I don't like to talk about it.
Same.
I might talk about what form it is. I'm
Yeah.
working on a book. I'm working on a comic book. I'm working on a screenplay. But I don't,
Yeah.
because I did get an MFA and it was not a good experience. It was very toxic. And a lot of the feedback
Was
was
your
so
MFA,
early.
was it right after, or were you already married? I can't remember.
I met my
Like how,
husband.
so it was a while ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a long time ago. It was
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and we were encouraged to, and at that point it was media, it was TV and screenplays. So we were encouraged to share things very early because, of course, we were students and we were
Yeah.
young. And I
Right.
was thinking when you're talking about your MFA, I think you were older than me, and I do think that makes a difference. I was
Yeah.
churning out pages, but I was not sitting with them. I wasn't letting time pass. So it was like, I need to write 20 pages. I'm
Right.
going to write
Right.
20 pages and then I'm going to turn them in and I'm going to get thrashed for them because,
Yes.
um, and I
Yes.
didn't talk about this in the piece, but, it was a very like white male gaze sort of place. So if you were writing anything that was not that, which I always am, um, no, people didn't like it. Certain people weren't going to like it. So I was definitely struggling with the same thing you're talking about how do you stay open? How do you guard your own voice? Um, and how do you know what's what? Um, and I found that difficult. And honestly, I stopped writing when I had my kids because I was just exhausted
Mm.
and over it. And I didn't actually, I don't really think I had contact with my voice at that point. I had been trying to perform
Mm.
for others for so long that I was just kind of,
That's
I really felt
that's
like I had
so
nothing left to say.
that's I feel like my performing for others literally was when I was acting and performing for others. I think
Sure.
that I feel so, well, because I got to writing when I did my workshop at University of Washington, that extension course where I first encountered this, why do I need other people? I do need other people, this push pull.
Yeah.
I already had my two kids, and then
Mm-hmm.
like 5 years later, I went to my master's, and so I was in that workshop experience. I didn't have a lot of worry about workshopping. I like the community, but my earlier like flattering myself all over the place and wanting approval, though that was somewhat present in the writing because I was so new to it,
Mm-hmm.
happened when I was acting on stage in New York and LA. And I feel like if I did it now, if I was acting now, it'd be different. I'm
For
still
sure.
thinking I'd be insecure in the ways that you can be insecure, but I think that you're right about the age and the time of life. Help me at least feel like, okay, what I have to say might be worth exploring. And
Mm-hmm.
I know what I want to say because this is very real for me. But had it been earlier, I definitely think my voice would have been more fragile. And this is the thing too about writing, like you and I just think about art, like the creative arts. You need other people to reflect back to you what they're experiencing with your work. That
Mm-hmm.
helps you as an artist understand and like calibrate.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you don't want to only be worried about how people are receiving. You have to be able to work in this space that's safe and I guess sacred, where you're just like what you're saying. You don't share your writing with people until it's ready.
Yeah, and I think also I totally agree with that. And I think also I didn't have a sense of audience at all. I just shared equally with people who would never ever read anything I wrote
Mm.
or see a movie of something I wrote because that's who my cohort was.
Yeah.
And it took me years to realize. And I mean, I think I told you I was talking with Emily Black about this. We went to grad school around the same time, and this kind of default voice was this white male cis voice, and we were all meant to replicate that voice
Mm-hmm.
instead of really exploring our own voices. And I didn't really understand. I didn't. It took me a while to realize, and I would think it when I was getting feedback from certain people. and it was always the same feedback from the same people. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't actually care, but I couldn't say that. I couldn't behave that way. I had to sit there and take it and be mature and and it's like, I
How
don't really care.
how many women did you have in your class?
Of 50, I think there was about 11 of us, so it was significantly less. And I was writing about women and sex and power. And there was just a lot of, she's not sympathetic. That was the note I got a lot. And when I'd say, oh, I don't care, I don't want her to be sympathetic, that wouldn't really solve any problems.
Yeah.
So,
Um, yeah. So then more about your article on brevity. So what else
mhm.
do you care about that?
I just was like, oh, I had this moment of feeling bristly. And then I thought, why am I bristly? She doesn't know. She doesn't, I've never told her how I feel. She's not a mind reader. I should, instead of being frustrated, articulate why I feel this way.
Mm.
And it was interesting for me to think about it and to write about it instead of just feeling like frustrated people aren't mind readers, which is not that constructive. And I realized how passionate I feel about it because I do feel like I understand the impulse that we want to share our work and we
Mm.
want feedback, of course, because it gets lonely and we want to know that we're on the right track. And so I want to acknowledge that impulse. But I just also really do want to encourage people to guard that first read and to understand you never get another one. You never get another first read with somebody. So is this when you want their feedback, a really trusted reader?
Do you
Think
feel
about it.
sharing it because they want to be told that it's ready and it's good and they're not really ready to go back and do more work? Is
I
that
think, I mean, I think for me, oftentimes I just wanted, yeah, I did want that. I've gotten so much better at taking edits and notes and understanding that the piece is getting better. And I think when I was greener, I definitely just wanted someone to go, great job. You have really nailed it. Instead of, saying, oh, this part's kind of sticking for me and I don't really know what's going on here. And now it's gotten to the point mostly when I give a piece to somebody and they give me notes, they're things that are kind of bugging me, but not in a way that I can articulate or figure out how to fix. It's like, oh yeah, that transition is awkward. And I really appreciate notes that just kind of point out what's not working for them. I'm guessing you feel the same way when people tell you how to solve it. You're like, oh no, no,
oh my gosh, though, but
no,
there you
I
might,
don't.
especially when I was first starting out, I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like when I was working with Jeffrey Gortney on my
Okay.
graduate school, I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean a pattern? Like I was a kid, my pattern. I was just a kid. My mom left. What do you mean my pattern? I was like, she's
Mm,
out. I was like, no, tell me. And then I was like, well, what do you mean? How many scenes should I put in my which?
hmm
So she gave me she left a little trail of breadcrumbs for me, and I had to figure it out, and I'm really glad I figured it out. But it's true that while people can boost you up, encourage you, and let you know you'll figure it out, it really is your process. And I do think I've firmly been in the camp of wanting to just be good at things without effort. I was talking to someone about this, like,
I think everyone has some of that.
yeah,
It's just varying degrees of
yeah,
yes.
no, oh, here's Michelle's rating. It's also the difference between a good editor and bad editor, and certainly between a beta reader and a professional editor. Well, that's totally true. Yeah.
Yes. I'm definitely talking about not a professional editor. If you're getting a professional editor, you would expect that kind of feedback. But
Who you love reading your stuff, do it for free, right?
I mean, I have a couple of readers who are just the people that I always read their stuff. I mean, they always read my stuff and I deeply trust them and I love them. And I feel very fortunate. And then I have other people who I trade stuff with. And honestly, I feel really grateful for them too. And I think I am a big fan of essay exchanges or chapter or page exchanges because both of you have some skin in the game. And
Yeah.
I think you're likely to treat someone with more care if you're about to hand over your work. Like you're less likely to be, hey, this sucks. If
Yeah.
if
Also, that
you're
too, because I think if you do have someone you'd like to read your work and it feels good and you resonate with what they're saying, that's a good reader. But it's also another thing, like once you have a relationship, if you don't feel like the person's notes are something that's actually, helpful to you, that's a good indicator that that's probably not someone you should be
Right.
reading.
Right.
Yeah.
And you do find that out more. I think as you have more experience, you find out these things so much more quickly. Where when I was, and I think that was sort of the energy behind the piece was when I was young, I didn't know. I didn't know it was okay to say, oh, these notes really aren't for me. This isn't really my audience. I don't even just like the style of the way this person gives notes. Like I'm allowed to say, hey, I don't like hearing in paragraph 3, you should change this word to this.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to hear that.
Oh, no, no.
You know,
Yeah. So then, have you submitted anything that you did not have someone read?
yes, this piece we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And other things too. And it's always, oh yeah, actually a bunch of other things. And I'm always surprised then when there are no edits from the place.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, you got nothing? Okay, sure. I guess it's ready.
Yeah. So, very relative, right? Like I feel like, I love to know something is ready.
I also ask that, Michelle, always. I always ask, what kind of feedback are you looking for? Always. Sorry to interrupt you, Ronit, but I think that's just such a,
So too,
yeah,
with, right, because I remember someone gave me an essay once and it was a very tight turnaround to read. And I knew that there were some bigger, like more macro things, but I also knew that they didn't have time to do that.
right.
So they were looking for line help,
Mm-hmm.
which is what they were able to do in the turnaround.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think asking that question, what kind of feedback are you looking for? And when I send something saying, here's what I'm looking for, I'm just much better about owning my side of the street and saying, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I want. And then having people ask me that. I find oftentimes when people send me their stuff, they just want general, how's this flowing for you? Does anything, because most people who at this point I'm exchanging with can get pretty far on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just sending it to me to be like, hey, I've read this 300 times.
Yeah.
Is there something I'm missing? That kind of thing.
And I think it's really, really helpful with the whole manuscript, right? Because that's something
Oh, yeah.
for a
I can
long,
imagine.
and that I think, so whereas I may not send smaller pieces out to people to read, I think
Mm-hmm.
have a longer manuscript, I would absolutely, before even I got an editor, would definitely have people read it for the fuller picture.
Yeah, and all that connective tissue because you're not writing it chronologically. You know,
Yeah.
you're not sitting down and writing your book, page 1, page 2. You know, that's just not how it works. And so there's redundancies
Yeah.
and also I think I find as I'm doing that, I'm in a different place when I'm writing different things. So then how do I unify that so it feels like it's all coming from the same person, so it doesn't feel too like, just like jumbled in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want it to feel cohesive, and I think that a reader can give you those kinds. Obviously a great editor can do any and all of these things, but I think we're mostly talking about people we're not paying.
Oh, yeah.
um so
Yeah, your writing community.
yeah.
Um, I would say about the nonlinear too. I've just done 2 interviews for nonlinear work, and
Mm-hmm.
it's stunning to me because I am a very A to B, like I'm a very arc oriented type of.
Mm-hmm.
I think I started in fiction, and I'm just like stunned. A couple of the people that are going to be on my show, they're really like, one did not have a lot of scenes, which shocked me because I still found it to be an incredibly captivating read, and then
Mm-hmm.
nonlinear, and somehow they work. The pieces, I talk about connective tissue a lot too,
You
and
do, and I love that phrase. I have now taken it on as my own.
I, um, I think that one, the pieces were just like sitting there. These chapters are just like sitting there without the connective tissue. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, what? You can do that every time something is done really well. I'm like, really? And then I realized you can be totally nonlinear. Like, also, like, I think a lot of it has to do with the voice. I think if you buy
Yeah.
voice and you believe and care about the protagonist,
Yeah.
someone tomorrow, like it's completely something that I haven't read before. And I thought, this is amazing that I care so much about her that I'm happy to read these little, like, I likened it to like paint splotches. Like it,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like your typical classic painting. It's, a memoir with an arc being,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of like splatters of paint on the canvas, but each of them is strong and beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
whole. And I was like, great. Like if I can do that, like I'll write another memoir tomorrow. Like,
You can do that. I
yeah,
mean, I think you can do it. And I agree with you about voice.
for her. I'm not trying to say that. I'm saying that for me is structure. Like structure is the thing that gets me all the time. I like get snagged on it a lot. And so I love figuring out structure, but
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a burden until I do. So I just like love how fluid everything can be
It
with
can. And I think also, like you say, it's for me, it is about voice. And I think that's actually a lot of places for me where the imposter syndrome has come in. It's like, because I know voice is so important. And then whose voice is it writing the book? It's mine. There's no getting around that, right? Like, there's all kinds of other things you can hide behind, but in the end, my voice is me.
but
And
of
so I
course
think,
voice is not who I'm talking to right now. Like
no,
that,
no. And that is also, there's all that area in there too, right? Like, this
yeah.
isn't me. And so, um, yeah, voice is sort of like, since you have acted, when you're acting, people are like, they have it, they don't have it, they did it, and you don't really know what it is. You just know whether people have it or don't. And voice is not quite the same, but it is that sort of, for me, sort of amorphous thing where you're like, what is voice? And how can you tell if someone's really engaged with their own voice or if they're using it as a tactic to hide behind,
Oh,
so it's a real balancing act, I think.
like you've got the character in the memoir with a voice that's uncertain, and what's so satisfying is if you have the narrator in the memoir, the narrator you calling that out. What's very frustrating
Mm,
about before is when you have a character in the memoir voice that is uncertain or not like going through life with a full awareness, but then the narrator memoirist also doesn't seem to be coming in there and lifting up that character to say, look, let me show you what you might have missed and this is what I wish you had done, or something like that. Not to,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because we want like sort of the mothership, um
mm-hmm,
looking down and
mm-hmm.
working on the little dollhouse, right?
Yeah. No, in an essay I just wrote recently, I actually I'll do that, almost what you said, where it's like, I wish I could have told myself,
Mm. Yeah,
believe yourself,
exactly.
but you can't,
Right, because I think the reader, if you have a smart reader, which most readers are pretty smart, they're,
especially if they're reading this stuff.
yeah, they're gonna realize like, oh god. And so when they see you doing it, it's sort of like a recognition, I think.
Yeah. It's a lot to balance. I mean, you are a memoir convert, and I realized that a friend asked me recently, what fiction books do you recommend? And I was like, oh, it's been a while. I have been, I have been reading so much memoir because there are incredible books coming out just every week. I can't even possibly keep up. And to me, it feels like a really great time for memoir. There's so many
Yeah,
powerful stories being told in ways that are unexpected and exciting, and it's
I,
just,
I just don't know that I can. It's harder for me to invest in fiction right now, and I think
mhm,
maybe I go into my hibernation, my hopeful hibernation, November, mid-November after the show launches. I'll maybe pick up some more fiction, but right now I'm just like pounding memoir, and
me
maybe,
too.
but I don't think so. I can't
And
imagine.
did you see Michelle's comment? I'm seeing a lot of memoirs attempt to employ a disembodied voice or Greek chorus type side voice, and it's not really working.
Holy schmoly. Listen, you can message me about that. I'm dying to know. I want to see how that,
I'm
how,
curious too, because one doesn't jump to mind at all. I feel like the stuff I've been reading has been very personal.
Greek.
And like, um, I feel like I read like four memoirs in a row that were not dissimilar. They had a lot of they were covering a lot of the same area. Um, Hoarder parent, mental illness, eating disorders, the concept of grit and resilience,
Mhm.
um, And I don't, and none of those did that. They were so personal. And one of them was so personal, I really felt like it was hard to read at times because it was not, the voice was like, here's what I went through. Here's what it was like. And it was very effective, but also hard,
But
you
what are
know.
you wish there was a different layer to the voice? I'm trying to
No, I thought it was good. I felt like it was at the end. She says it's accepted, which we're going to discuss with the author later this year. I felt at the end of the book she talks about. Sorry, it's acceptance. She talks about how she went through exposure therapy and had to just talk over and over about what happened to her to get herself to understand what happened to her. And the book feels like that kind of explicit explanation of what it was like. And I think there is a real audience for that because people don't get it.
mm-hmm.
People need it really. And she goes so deep into being in foster care and her mother being a hoarder. And I think she just had so many people gaslight her whole life that she was the problem. So this book is her taking it back. She's not the problem. And then I read I'm Glad My Mom Died, which covers a ton of the same territory in a very different way. And I would posit that they're in different points in their healing journey. That's all I would say.
No more. I am really curious about the Greek chorus type of style.
Yeah, I'm
I
so curious because I used to love Greek tragedy because
uh,
I
yeah,
loved catharsis.
yeah.
Um,
Um, but yeah, Michelle, for real, if you're still watching, like, send something because I'm dying to know. I want to.
yeah, and then you can send it on to me.
Yeah, yeah. So take
Before we wrap up, did we get to all our questions?
take a look because I don't have the post in front of me. I mean, do you?
How do we know when something's ready? Who is our first reader? What work can we do on our piece instead of seeking validation?
Oh yeah, I think that you had mentioned that in your piece,
Mm-hmm.
which you have to go all through everything. Like, in fact, I think sometimes I'm a real checklisty person. Um,
Mm-hmm.
me about this because it's kind of more intuitive, and I don't mean that in a highfalutin way. I just feel like I kind of get a sense. But
Mm-hmm.
husband, you just joined.
Hi, husband.
What happened? Feeling jealous. Um, but anyhow, yeah, like the things that should all be there. Oh, there we go. She's writing to us again. And
Yes, one was God, one was a guardian angel, and one was the voice of memory, distinct from a present tense narrative, natural voice indicated in intent. Whoa! Okay, I haven't read any of those books because I would remember all of those things for sure.
listening, yeah, I have to say something about italics.
You have to say something about what?
Italics.
Oh, yes, italics.
Uh,
Okay, please say something.
I have not said this anywhere else. You're hearing it.
This is an exclusive.
Don't do it.
Hmm.
But there's
Yeah.
very few moments I believe in any memoir that earn the italics.
Um, okay, I have a question because I don't really use italics except emphasis on a specific word. You know, like if I'm thinking something.
I'm talking about there's somewhat in fashion to do italics as your thoughts.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting. Because to me, that feels more like um, a bit of a cheat, where I think the thoughts should be integrated into the piece itself, and then you would know the difference if the
Yeah.
voice is developed enough.
Yeah. I have to say, like, I
Oh,
don't
that's interesting.
understand. I don't
I did
understand.
not know the trend, so I
Yeah, I
don't.
think Michelle does.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
So I think, in terms of that last question and keeping on top of the time because we're about at our end,
Mm-hmm.
I think that, if you go out, there's this like intuitive feeling for writing for me where I just need to put something down. But then maybe what would be useful in terms of have I answered the questions I need to answer is for me to also then say to myself or write it down. And this is a new idea right now is like, okay, what I wanted to do with this was this, like to then kind of make it a little more scientific. This is what I wanted to do with this. Do I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I've achieved that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a good question you can then take to your reader, or just say, what did, later after they give you the notes, be like, did you feel like I was doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think intentionality is important. And I think as I do everything in life more, I get more comfortable with that. Like I don't just throw stuff out there and wonder how it's going to land. I'm more intentional about what I'm throwing out and to whom and why. And that I think that's a huge difference between having experience and not. I didn't even believe in myself. So I certainly couldn't be intentional about going into the world with my words.
Yeah, no, no, no. It takes time and practice, and you just have to have sort of that leap of faith. I think that you are onto something, right?
Yeah, and I have to say, like, because some people I know are writing books and have not published essays or published much, anything, and there is no way I would be able to write a book. Like I needed to publish essays and have people say, "Wow, I really love this. This really spoke to me, and I'd like to read more." I needed that in order to take the dive. And to the people who don't need that, bravo. But I did need it.
Mm,
I did, and it was the push that I needed, like I said. But it's also something I can lean on
mm.
when I'm feeling doubtful. Like, well, and I wrote this other stuff and people liked it. I think that yeah, people might like this too. And so uh,
Yeah.
everyone has to know their own way. But I have appreciated, and I have also appreciated sharing pieces of myself publicly and having that experience. I think for me, it would be really challenging to go from 0 to 100, to
Mm,
go from nothing to a book.
hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so I'm a person who likes to familiarize myself with something before going in too deep.
Well,
So
how you're living your writing life? Is this a life you enjoy? Is this
mhm,
up? Because you'll need to write a book. Yeah,
indeed.
yeah.
Well, it's always a pleasure. I
Hey,
love doing this,
me
and
too.
it's good to ask ourselves these questions. I think, and I wouldn't take the time to think about them with the same level of seriousness if I wasn't sitting down and talking to you. So, thank
Thank
you.
really think so because I don't sit there and talk about my writing life or think about it too much, but this is a good
No.
way to kind of check in, and I'm so happy that we had some participation today. And
Yes, thank you. It was lovely.
I love that's really fun because I feel like it's more of a party. So I'll wait.
Yes, a memoir party.
Yeah, and thanks everyone who showed up, and
Yes.
play later.
Okay, thank you. We'll be back next month.
Bye.
Bye.